Allen Lund Company looks forward to seeing you at Matt's in March.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
The House Highway Subcommittee discussed roadway safety this week, and autonomous vehicles spent some time in the spotlight. Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine joined Scott Thompson to discuss that and more. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is an important federal agency that mainly regulates automobile safety, but it also has a huge impact on the trucking industry. I'll discuss the nominee to head that agency with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. The new class of Congress wasted no time drilling down into the truck parking crisis. Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine details the latest in Congress before talking about action on the state level and more in our latest installment of The Parking Zone. And finally, plenty of people have taken a crack at helping solve the truck parking crisis, including some individuals. And there are lessons to be learned, as one trucker told Marty Ellis. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. And now, here's Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. We'll spend a little time in our nation's capital for the next few minutes talking about a couple new developments. The first being a hearing within the House Highways and Transit Subcommittee on Wednesday. Joining us today is our returning champion, Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine. Mark, how are we doing?
I've suffered a few L's over the years, so I don't know if I'm the champ.
More W's than L's, though. So,
I appreciate that.
There you go. So lawmakers, witnesses did go over a number of transportation-related topics of interest on Wednesday during that subcommittee hearing. I'm most curious about the talk here about autonomous vehicles, though. Mark, one of the witnesses there really seemed to lean into the safety concerns associated with the push to deploy self-driving vehicles, and it was a relatively big talking point.
Yeah, Kathy Chase, president of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety, was one of the witnesses testifying, and she was asked several questions on the topic and also mentioned it in her opening statements. And basically, kind of like, her message was really just looking at that we need safeguards. If you look at, the surveys and things that have been done to the public, I think only 9% of the public, according to a AAA survey, trust driverless vehicles right now. And when you talk about driverless trucks, 18-wheelers, it gets really kind of scary when you think about that. But I mean, overall, right now the public is leery of driverless vehicles at all. You're going down the highway 75 miles an hour, turn over to your right and see, a vehicle with nobody in it. That could be concerning, and you understand why. And so basically, her message and some of the other people on the panel as well were talking about different safeguards and different regulations that probably need to be in place. There are so many regulations right now that exist for drivers, for whether you're a CDL holder or just even a passenger vehicle driver. And there's really, those safeguards aren't in place right now for driverless vehicles. And it's especially concerning when we look at that, Aurora is planning on deploying driverless trucks this year in Texas.
Yeah, it's one of these topics that I'm not sure is getting enough attention in Congress because it feels like we're kind of asleep at the wheel, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
No pun intended there. But I guess in terms of the conversations on Wednesday, what were those conversations in terms of what we can expect Congress to do to put some of those safeguards in place? What is Kathy Chase, I guess, hoping they'll do here, moving forward?
Well, one example that she gave, which I thought was pretty interesting, was just giving some examples of current regulations and things that right now there's nothing in place for driverless vehicles. And the example that she gave was, vision. If anybody, whether you're truck driver or just a driver of a passenger vehicle, you have to take an eye test, and you have to be able to have, either have glasses or you have to do something to make sure that you can see well enough to drive safely. And I think I've never heard anybody argue about that or think that was an unnecessary regulation. It makes sense. And so what she was bringing up is right now, there is nothing in place. There are no minimum standards to test the quote unquote vision of these driverless vehicles, making sure they're picking up everything. That's just one example of things that would need to be in place. There are so many things that drivers right now are responsible for. And, who's going to be responsible for these things? How will they be tested? How do we make sure that the safety is there? She did mention several times that she agrees that there is promise with this technology, but there have been examples, whether it's San Francisco and the robo-taxis and, stalled vehicles blocking fire trucks from getting to scenes, of a fire. Or also, I think there was a shooting in San Francisco that police wasn't able to get to in time because there was a driverless vehicle blocking traffic. These are real scenarios that have already happened. And like I said, she's not pro or anti driving trucks, but they want to make sure that they're safe and perfected before they're rolled out on the highway.
Yeah, it seemed like lawmakers in that subcommittee hearing were receptive to the idea of putting these safeguards in place. The question being, what's going to happen now? And we're not even getting into the whole losing jobs conversation as it pertains to this as well. So this is a conversation that needs to be had. It needs to be had on a grand scale, and we need to see some of these things put in place. And that conversation, I'm sure, will continue there in Congress, and we'll continue it as well here. One more item of note, Mark, I wanted to get to before we let you go. We've got a new bill introduced in both chambers of Congress that would make electric vehicle owners pay into the Highway Trust Fund. What can you tell us about the Fair Share Act, as it's called? Yeah,
so right now, Highway Trust Fund is basically that money for years has been generated through fuel taxes from, gas and diesel from cars and trucks, and that's how we pay in. So all these years that electric vehicles have been out there, they have not been contributing to the Highway Trust Fund, which is what, pays for our roads and bridges, maintenance and all of that. So what this bill would do is basically put electric vehicles on the hook to where they would contribute. And it's at the manufacturer level, point of sale. Electric vehicle off the top would be $1,000 would go in to the Highway Trust Fund from that. And then there would also be a fee for any of these electric vehicle batteries, which are pretty heavy. Any of those that weigh more than 1,000 pounds would be assessed another $550. So a max of $1,550 that would go into the Highway Trust Fund every time an electric vehicle was sold, a heavy electric vehicle.
And it's got the support of OOIDA, other trucking organizations as well. We'll continue to monitor this. And Mark, we appreciate your time as always, keeping us up to date on all these issues that are going on out there.
Happy to do it.
That's a wrap on Landline Now News for today. Our thanks to Mark Schrimmer for his time as always. Mark Reddick, we'll toss it back to you.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to William H. Newland of Winchester, Virginia. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 53 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 398 years without causing a single accident. Next, I'll find out what we know about the nominee to head NHTSA from OOIDA's Jay Grimes. Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine joins us with an update regarding federal action on truck parking, and Marty Ellis talks about the difficulty of creating more truck parking. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is an important federal agency that mainly regulates automobile safety, but it also has a huge impact on the trucking industry. Now, we have an idea of who might head that agency going forward. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Rettig. I'm joined, as always, by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, how are you doing?
Doing well, Mark. Good to be with you.
Well, glad to have you here. So let's just cut right to the chase here. Who is President Trump's nominee, and what can you tell us about their background?
His name is Jonathan Morrison. He was most recently an executive at Apple. He's also had experience with car dealerships, and then also served as chief counsel at NHTSA during the first Trump administration. So certainly has some experience working with the Trump White House. Also has experience within the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and then also brings some private sector knowledge and experience as well. So he is the pick to be the administrator at NHTSA, and it's actually been quite a while since the last time NHTSA had a Senate confirmed nominee leading the agency. There have been a host of different folks who have served in acting and deputy roles, some folks that have been nominated for administrator but never made it through the confirmation process. So we'll see where this one ends up. But obviously, NHTSA is certainly a very important agency that we deal with quite a bit from the trucking side of things. They regulate federal motor vehicle safety standards and the equipment that is regulated for commercial vehicles.
Now, in his previous stint there at NHTSA, do we know any of the issues that Morrison was involved in?
Not specifically to the issues that he was involved in, but obviously a big issue that's going to come up, and some issues that the agency has certainly been involved with is the investigations into Tesla, their autopilot, full self-driving modes. Back in early January, for years, NHTSA has done some investigations into problems with the Tesla technology. Obviously, the connection with Tesla and now Elon Musk, who is playing a critical role with the new administration, is going to create some questions as Mr. Morrison goes through the confirmation process. And NHTSA's history with Tesla dates back to when Mr. Morrison was chief counsel at NHTSA. So I think that's going to be a key theme when Mr. Morrison appears before the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee for his nomination hearing. A date for that hearing has not been set quite yet. And I think another major theme is going to be NHTSA's autonomous vehicle policy, which is going to, I think a lot of senators asked DOT Secretary Duffy when he went through the process. So I think we'll learn a little bit more about how NHTSA, intends to, provide some oversight on autonomous vehicles, or is it going to be simply kind of the status quo where the federal government doesn't really do a whole lot, and it's kind of a state patchwork of state laws that is currently kind of dictating where and how some of these technology companies are developing and testing their vehicles.
You mentioned Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy and his confirmation hearing, and during that, he was asked about the Tesla investigation, and of course, the concern being with Elon Musk having such a role, would they continue? And he indicated that it would carry forward. Does it appear at this point that's going to carry through now with Morrison there at NHTSA?
We'll have to take Mr. Duffy at his word for that. I think we'll get some more specific details and questions. This is, I think, going to be a priority for senators who want to see the investigations continue, want to make sure that the Tesla vehicles are operating safely. So I think we'll kind of continue to do that path. Now, some of these investigations can kind of take a back seat. So it's going to be curious to see what Mr. Morrison's insights and responses, because that question is going to come up. Certainly the question of Elon Musk's conflict of interest, as he kind of is taking a review across a whole host of government agencies right now with the Department of Government Efficiency that he is leading. And the White House has indicated if there's a problem, Mr. Musk is not going to be involved. So that's definitely going to be something to watch. And I anticipate we'll get a better, more precise answer from Mr. Morrison during his testimony. Certainly, the Tesla vehicles, the history of the full safety driving modes, have resulted in some accidents and some crashes and fatalities that I think merit some oversight. And that's kind of been our message to NHTSA throughout the past number of years, that there needs to be more comprehensive transparency from the technology developers, more enforcement and regulation from DOT on the autonomous vehicles. And that's something that Mr. Duffy has alluded to as well in some of his comments, that there needs to be federal rules in place that kind of guide how these vehicles are being tested and deployed, rather than this confusing patchwork of state laws. On the other hand, I think Mr. Duffy has also made in kind of the same breath that he doesn't want to stifle innovation in any way as well. So this has been a delicate balance when you talk about the evolution of AV production, manufacturing, and deployment. And to this point, both DOT as well as Congress have kind of, I think they've wanted to tackle it, but haven't really been able to execute anything beyond voluntary guidelines or recommendations. So it's going to be, I think, something to watch in the hearing upcoming, if this is going to be a major priority in terms of having some more stringent rules on the books, or if it's going to kind of be more hands-off.
So at this point, we are waiting for a Senate committee to talk to Mr. Morrison, and then, of course, the Senate to hold a full confirmation vote. Do we have any kind of sense of a timeline on that? Is that going to likely happen soon?
I would anticipate it will be within the next few weeks. Senate is, continuing. I think we're on the last stretch of full secretary nominations. Those are wrapping up. We do have a couple of other ones to work through, including the Department of Labor, whose nominee, former Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer. Her hearing was supposed to take place this week. That got postponed due to weather. So the Senate's still working on a number of top-level nominations. We've got a few nominees as well to some of the other agencies that have been announced under DOT. The pipeline and hazmat has been announced. Those have not been scheduled either. So a little bit of a waiting period, and of course, still keeping our eye on the nominee for FMCSA administrator.
Well, let's go to another topic here. As the bird flu continues to infect more and more of the nation's poultry, it's impacting more and more segments of the economy, and now trucking is on that list. Jay, as I understand it, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has declared a regional emergency regarding this situation. What specifically did they say in that declaration?
So they declared a regional emergency due to the spread of bird flu, impact on flock populations and food supplies. And this is really causing a major egg shortage throughout the country. And within the last month or so, California, Iowa, and Louisiana had previously issued separate bird flu declarations and conditions due to conditions in those states. We've seen some new reports, I think, in Ohio and Pennsylvania. So FMCSA has kind of come in and said that the conditions in California, Iowa, and Louisiana remain a threat to public safety and welfare, but have also noted that concerns have arisen in other areas. So the FMCSA declaration now provides regulatory relief for commercial motor vehicles providing direct assistance, supporting emergency relief efforts involving the transportation of live chickens from areas impacted by the bird flu to unaffected areas. So this is kind of our standard emergency declarations that we most generally see in terms of natural disaster situations, but we've kind of seen it used in other areas as well, especially related to the pandemic. We've seen it related to different heating, oil, and gas uses as necessary, and now to kind of help tackle this egg shortage and this bird flu that's kind of risen up here in the last few months. So if you're a driver transporting live chickens from areas impacted by the bird flu, you are going to have some hours of service regulatory relief from FMCSA.
There are a few requirements that truckers have to meet in order to use this emergency declaration and get that relief. Can you give us some examples of those requirements?
Yeah, there's about 10 different stipulations that you've got to comply with. Have to have a valid agreement from the receiving facility to accept delivery of the live chickens. Drivers cannot drive more than 16 hours in any 24-hour period. Driver must stop all driving at midnight each day. Have to take a minimum 6-hour break in a sleeper berth before resuming any driving. Can use paper records of duty of status and supporting documents. Obviously have to maintain a valid CDL and not be subject to an out-of-service order. And then, continuing to comply with all other federal and state regulations beyond hours of service. So, intended to provide some hours of service relief if you're providing direct assistance in terms of transporting chickens. Another thing to note is that this emergency declaration is effective through March 10th. If needed, I'm sure FMCSA will quickly extend that if the need arises.
Let's get one final topic in. We just have a little bit of time left, Jay. Back in 2021, the bipartisan infrastructure law established a program to increase the number of electrical vehicle charging locations nationwide, and apparently now there's action that may bring that to an end. This occurred at the DOT. Can you kind of give us details on what happened there?
Yeah, this is kind of related to sort of the regulatory freeze that is taking place with the new administration, kind of reviewing the policies and grant programs that have been approved. And this National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program allocated a total of $5 billion to establish a nationwide network of electric charging stations enacted in that 2021 bipartisan infrastructure law. I think there's been some questions about the rollout of the program, how that money is being spent. And the new leadership, I think, has paused the allocation of that funding as they kind of want to review and maybe amend some of the provisions regarding that program. So they are going to be issuing new guidance that is set to come out in the spring. But until that time, no obligations may occur until that guidance is issued and new state plans are submitted and approved. So been some pushback from congressional Democrats who like this program, but the new administration, I think, wants to see if it can be done more efficiently. Obviously, a lot of questions on how EV infrastructure is being spent and being rolled out for the trucking industry.
Okay, well, Jay, we've run out of time, but thank you for the information.
All right, thank you.
I've been talking with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Landline Now will be back in just a moment.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on TruckStop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
A blank space on many maps with the distance between parking spaces seemingly as great as infinity. It is the boundary that separates safety and security from the dangers of the road, the space between electronic signs and a place in which to rest. It is not a dimension of the imagination, but instead the reality faced by truck drivers every single day. It is a place we call the parking zone. Here are your guides for this journey into parking news good and bad, Scott Thompson and Tyson Fisher.
Thanks, Mark. Scott here, joined by Tyson Fisher right there. Tyson, thanks for being here.
Right over here. Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
We've got a lot to get to here. We've got a new Congress in place, obviously, and I don't think it's a secret that it can take a while sometimes for things to get up and running. But this case, the House has not really wasted any time locking onto the truck parking crisis, which I think is good news. The issue came up in the very first Transportation and Infrastructure Committee hearing, and it seems like they have some momentum behind this issue.
Yeah, right out the gate, we're talking about truck parking and the in the committee that matters the most when it comes to truck parking.
Yeah.
So, Transportation Infrastructure Committee held its first hearing for this new 119th Congress. That's what they talked about, amongst many other things, but truck parking was part of it. So Sarah Galitza, she is Home Depot's vice president of transportation. She mentioned truck parking in her opening statement. So that was a huge priority for her to talk about. Specifically, she mentioned that the motor carriers that Home Depot hires, they've told the company that truck parking is the most significant infrastructure issue for truckers, and they're not wrong. That's absolutely true. So she suggested that Congress provide more funding for truck parking. Enter Representative Mike Bost,
the champion of this issue. Yep.
Absolutely. So during he spent his time to talk about just that, the truck parking funding. But yeah, he's the guy behind the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act for the past, I think we're at 3 past Congresses. He's done it.
Right,
I think we're coming up on our 4th edition of this, which has not been reintroduced yet, but all indications are it's going to happen this time. Anyway, that's $755 million to expand truck parking capacity. The key here is dedicated funding. We have mentioned this several times on this show before, which is a lot of the currently available funding is not going to truck parking because, unfortunately, truck parking is not necessarily a high priority for many, if not most, state DOTs. During this committee hearing, Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry pretty much confirmed that to the committee, pointing out that in Louisiana, they have this very expensive bridge that they have to repair. And he said that if he had to choose between the bridge and truck parking, the bridge is going to win.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Which does. Yeah. And that's going to be the case probably for many, if not most DOTs. So, it's good that was actually brought up to the committee to kind of put that into perspective. Going back to Galitza real quick of Home Depot, she reminded the committee of the safety issues that come with the lack of truck parking, but she also called for what she called national technology to find available spots. So you have these truck parking information systems from state to state. Those states have their own apps and own websites for that. There's no centralized national database.
It's a patchwork kind of
It is.
system,
And so you would have to have, when you're traveling interstate, you would have to have multiple apps that you would have to switch over each time you cross state lines. She kind of was like, it'd be kind of nice if we had just one app to do that. And so hopefully, they take that into consideration, because I think that would be a pretty great idea to have. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's encouraging that this conversation is being had, I think, and we've seen a lot of momentum. I know you certainly have over recent years on this issue, awareness, actually trying to figure out a way to go about doing what we all know needs to be done, which is increasing truck parking nationwide. The question, many questions, but one that you raised there too is just how you're going to pay for all of this. And we talked about the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, which would be, $755 million over 3 years. We do anticipate that being reintroduced here. I know one thing being discussed, too, is the solvency of the Highway Trust Fund. That's a big talking point, kind of woven into this conversation as well, along with those legislative solutions that are out there. That's going to be the big question moving forward here. You kind of alluded to it there, but those conversations are always being had, and I'm not sure anybody necessarily has one answer that they can land on, right?
No, they don't, and you're right. That's going to be the conversation that we're going to be hearing a lot about for the next several months, probably for the rest of the year, if not longer. But with that said, a week after the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee hearing, the Highways and Transit Subcommittee had their first meeting. Again, a week after, and again, truck parking was brought up. Part of that conversation you're talking about with funding and whatnot.
Right.
This time, again, Mike Bost steps up to the plate, asks about truck parking funding. He asked Jim Timon, who's the executive director of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, if the states would use that money. And of course, the guy said, yeah, we would, but money isn't the only issue when it comes to truck parking. He pointed out to the subcommittee that governments are limited as to what they can do with the land that they own for truck parking, including commercialization of land to support truck parking, which they just can't do. So he kind of hinted at the idea that maybe perhaps we loosen up some of those regulations, to which Mike Bost seemed interested to look into. I think if there was any, administration that would be open to that, it would probably be this Trump administration. So not to get anyone's hopes up, we don't know what that would look like. But basically, it's like we need to loosen up some of these regulations if you want the states to expand the truck parking.
Yeah, this is a frustrating thing, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's one of these things where we know what the problem is. We know what a solution would be, or at least part of the solution would be. It's just a matter of getting everybody on the same page and getting across that finish line. I am hopeful that we're getting closer to that finish line, and I feel like we can almost see it at this point, but those conversations will continue. And again, we always preach this, but reach out to your lawmakers, develop that relationship, and let them know, how big a problem this is for not just you, but for everybody out there and the supply chain at large. Let's focus here. Let's turn our focus, rather, to the state level of things here. We've had a few state lawmakers in a few states start the year by introducing truck parking bills. They're pretty ambitious for the most part, but again, also an encouraging sign that we've got states looking at this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So Landline State Legislative Editor Keith Goebel, he's been following state legislation very closely, found 3 states addressing truck parking through legislation. Now, two of three of these things are things that truckers aren't going to want to hear.
Yeah.
I'll explain here in a second. Pennsylvania, what's happening over there? There's a non-binding resolution directing a commission to conduct a thorough and comprehensive study of truck parking, which would provide recommendations for achieving adequate parking in the state. Yes, it's a study. I know that's not what we want to hear. Yes. This bill was actually introduced last year and died in committee, so hopefully we'll get some more momentum here on that Pennsylvania truck parking study. Meanwhile, in Virginia, very similar to the Pennsylvania bill, a joint resolution directing the Virginia DOT to, again, study truck parking, but this one's going to be specifically along Interstate 66 and the Interstate 95 corridors, focused on those problem, freight corridor areas. So that bill requires a report and recommendations by November 30th. So 2 states kind of looking to study the issue. But meanwhile, in New Jersey, and I like this one a little bit more, there's a bill that would require truck parking to be included in plans for large warehouse development. So whenever such development is proposed, the application must provide for an adequate number of on-site truck parking spaces as a condition of preliminary site plan approval. Basically, what it means is if you're going to build a big warehouse where there's a lot of trucks coming in and out, you have to make sure that increase in truck traffic doesn't bleed over into basically the local, residential areas or even local businesses. Even if there's a truck stop nearby, you have to make sure that increase in truck traffic doesn't lead to overnight parking overflow at the nearby trucks. Basically, just provide parking.
Make sure you've got spaces for them to go.
A very simple thing that I can't believe that needs to be a law. That should just be a thing that we do when you have so many. But it's not a thing, but New Jersey's trying to make it a thing, and it's a thing that I think everywhere it should be implemented everywhere.
Yes, we need more of that thing. for sure. Yeah. And, regarding the studies, if they're looking at places where truck parking can more easily be incorporated into those areas, I think that is a plus. If it's a study looking into, do we have a problem here?
Yeah.
I can save you some time. Yes, you've got a problem. Let's figure out where to put these spaces for sure. Let's shift here to Arizona, where the state has launched a truck parking availability system. I know there are mixed feelings out there about just how helpful these systems are, but regardless, they are in place in parts of Arizona, or will be, I think, soon, right?
Oh, no, it is now. So, so the I-10 truck parking availability system, Arizona, I'm pretty sure it's officially live. So again, this is the system that includes those electronic signs that show you, how many truck parking spaces are available at the upcoming rest areas along the interstate. So far in Arizona, this is going to be used at 4 rest areas. It's going to be the Ehrenberg rest area at mile marker 4, the Bouse Wash at mile marker 52, Texas Canyon rest area at mile marker 320, and San Simon rest area at mile marker 389. I know we mentioned the trucker survey for this a while back. So the thing is, if enough of you drivers out there participated in that study, then this system should be pretty well informed for the most part. So, but you did mention, it's like, well, there's some mixed feelings about this. A few years ago, the American Transportation Research Institute released a report revealing that truck drivers do find these information systems useful. And that rings more true the more inexperienced the drivers. So those newer drivers they're finding these systems to be useful. And I think that as long as the younger drivers, have a place to park, the older, more experienced drivers, they already know where to go. They're going to find like the hidden spots. It benefits everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there is value in it. I shouldn't discount it. Outright or too much here. Information obviously does help, and it does save you time if you aren't having to go to a place where there aren't any spots. But again, I know there are mixed feelings as to. I think there's a feeling that we put this in place, we've solved the problem.
Right.
It's like not quite. Obviously information is helpful, but quite a few more steps that you need to take there. You mentioned ATRI. We should mention a study that they have out right here, and the idea of this one is it will help states kind of craft their plans, right, for truck parking.
Yeah. So, ATRI is working with, from what I understand, all 50 state DOTs to identify best practices for expanding truck parking at public rest areas and other state-owned locations. So, basically most of the rest areas we've been talking about. Right now, ATRI needs truck drivers to basically just fill out a quick, I believe it's a 12-question survey just regarding state-owned truck parking. So, again, I know everyone has got this, study fatigue. We're just tired of hearing about, surveys and studies. I get it. It is kind of frustrating. But the reality is that each entity tasked with addressing truck parking will need its own study that quantifies the problem in that specific area. So with that being said, the research output is only as good as the data input. Meaning, the more truck drivers that participate in the surveys, that better that data that they get, and the better, more informed decisions that these state DOTs can make. So this is my long-winded way of pleading to the truck drivers to please go to ATRI, American Transportation Research Institute, and take that survey.
Yeah, and we'll have a link as well on landlinenow.com if you want to check that out. It's 12 questions. I'm looking at it right now. It's not overly intensive, but it does give... it will give, I think, if you answer it, a pretty good idea of, what states need to be doing perhaps to fix this problem. You can check out Tyson's outstanding work on the truck parking crisis and many other issues as well over on our website, landline.media. And again, landlinenow.com is where we'll have that link. Tyson, pleasure as always.
Pleasure's mine.
We will step out now for a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We've got more Landline Now coming right up.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Every week we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. Outside of government, plenty of people have taken a crack at helping solve the truck parking crisis. Most of them are people who own businesses or new commercial enterprises, but in a few cases, individual people have stepped up to try to do their part. And there are lessons to be learned in that process, as one truck driver told Marty.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you doing?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Where are you at right now?
Over at the Petro in El Paso, Texas. This is our final day here, and that's I-10, exit 37. They have 290 parking spots, a Black Bear Diner, and 15 showers.
Ah, Black Bear Diner again. That's one of our favorites.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that are kind of getting people's attention right now. And you mentioned one that I think is pretty important, and that is the cost of making truck parking. And this is something that really got my attention a while back, because I just started doing the math and looking at how much a state put aside for truck parking and how many spaces. It's really expensive to create parking for trucks.
It really is. And the reason this got popped up into my head is because one of our members came in and was discussing with me that, he used to think that the $20 or $25 for a parking spot that you reserved ahead of time was a little high. And he had a piece of property where he is, and that's where he keeps his truck. He put enough gravel in to go in and turn around and park it. And he had thought about putting more gravel in and just kind of gravel in the whole place and have it open for, trucks to park at, and maybe getting hooked up with one of the truck parking people out here in the country. And he started looking at what he would have to do, because in his mind, he was just thinking, well, this is just going to be a parking spot. I'm not going to, have a whole bunch of stuff. He didn't really want to fence it in, and it is fenced in right now, but then he'd have to put an automatic gate and all that. And so he wanted to keep it fairly simple. And when he was looking it up, he was adding up, all the regulations and all the permits. And one of the people that he had talked to with the state said that he would have to put in hydrants out there. And then this is just a piece of land right now. And then, of course, there would be the possibility of other permits that he would have to, make sure that he complied with. And he was looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just to make that happen. And it just doesn't make dollars and cents. And so, but once he had that eye-awakening time, where he was looking at those figures, and then he started thinking, when I reserve a spot and it's guaranteed that it'll be there when I get there, maybe it's not as expensive as I was thinking before.
Interesting what perspective does for you.
It does, and it was really eye-opening for me, because that's what I thought. Well, put some more gravel in, and we already know that that's not cheap, but it's definitely doable. But yeah, when you put in all the things that go along with it, and that's not even thinking about paving or blacktopping or cementing or anything, it's kind of crazy.
It's interesting. There's other things, too, that can happen to someone. I remember years ago, someone that had a gravel lot where a lot of trucks parked got hit because some of these trucks were leaking oil. And so they got hit with an environmental fine because it was a gravel lot.
Yep. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that he had mentioned. And yeah, it's, and then insurance, in case somebody would get hurt on your property. There's just so much of this goes into it. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I forgot that he mentioned about, checking the ground before he would start it. And then, of course, there would have to be some sort of monitoring of it in the future.
And you mentioned the insurance right there. And of course, I think a lot of folks think, well, I have homeowners insurance, but homeowners insurance might not cover something that essentially is a commercial enterprise. And that's how they're going to probably look at that. And then you're into a whole other mess of insurance, and it can get pretty pricey. So it's definitely something, I think a lot of the key to this, there is a lot in the way of parking lots around the country that are being underutilized or unused. And a lot of that could be converted, and it's already there. It doesn't cost anything more to make use of that.
Yeah, and so much of that's owned by a county or a state or, some sort of entity out there it's already theirs, like you said, and, they should be able to utilize that for, the over-the-road truckers, but I don't. Some states are really good at that, and then others really need some work.
Yeah. Well, some states just really need some work, period.
That's true.
Something else that you brought up is folks that were having trouble loading because of high wind. What's going on there?
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of a theme, whenever people come in and talk to me in the trailer, some of it sparks ideas of what we can talk about and, kind of what our members are facing out here on the road and in everyday life as a truck driver. And one of our life members stopped in yesterday, and he's all of a sudden the wind starts kicking up and the dust goes everywhere, and it was starting to turn into a heck of a mess. And he said, "Oh man, I may not be able to load tomorrow because of the wind." And I said, "What are you talking about? You can't load because of the wind." I mean, it just wasn't, how something, somebody says something and it just doesn't compute in your brain. Well,
oh yeah.
As soon as he told me what he hauls, which were windmill blades, then it's like, okay, that's a big sale. So I get you not wanting to take a crane out there and lift that up into the air, and yeah, it would make for a bad day, and put people in harm and equipment in harm. And so it all made sense once I realized what he was hauling.
Well, yeah, I mean, those things are intended to catch the wind. They're kind of designed for it. So that doesn't seem like a real good idea there.
Yeah.
Well, we have just a little bit of time left here, Marty, and I thought I'd check with you. You've got a few more stops here before you have a little bit of home time, don't you?
Yeah, we're going to have one more stop after El Paso, and that'll be at the Road Ranger in Cisco, Texas. And that's the 15th through the 16th. And I believe it's exit 20 off of I-20. So if I'm wrong, I guess, you guys can look it up. But it has a Wendy's and has a pizza joint and 100 parking spots, 6 showers, a taco place, and so it's going to be our first Road Ranger, so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, well, it sounds like a smaller truck stop, but hopefully it's a nice one, and hope you enjoy it there.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Marty, we're kind of out of time here. Are there any final words you want to offer up before you ride off into the sunset?
Yeah, just remember, be kind to one another and give that driver next to you a break.
Children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That includes truck stops, truck shows, and other special events across the country. Again, you can find that at our website, landlinenow.com. That's our program for today. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad.
A son.
A husband.
Wife.
I'm a writer.
Photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome, and I am a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.